Hello everyone, Richard here, and welcome to the 9th episode in my Killing Floor 2 perk guide. Today we're going to be looking at one of the more complex perks and potentially powerful perks, the Berserker. The Berserker, or Zerk, is a melee-focused perk and one that thrives in the heat of combat. Compared to other perks, he is much more nimble and is almost always more durable, thanks to his increased damage resistance both passively and through skills. The Berserker's passive perk abilities at level 25 include 25% increased perk weapon damage, 15% damage resistance, night vision capabilities, and being immune to clock grabs. Much of the identity of the Berserker is gained through skills unlocked every 5 levels, which unfortunately makes the Berserker a bit harder to play early on until around level 15 to 20. However, the ability to move relatively freely amongst Zeds and deliver powerful melee blows underlines how this perk should for the most part be played. Berserkers also have access to the EMP, or electromagnetic pulse grenade, allowing you to temporarily disable Zeds from using special attacks or sprinting. Against flesh pounds, it can prevent them from raging from damage, and against Skrakes, it can temporarily slow them down once they do become enraged. While the EMP isn't my personal favorite grenade, it can make approaching certain situations more safe, like attacking a group of bloats or husks to avoid their powerful close-range attacks. At the very least, it can assist in a Zed takedown for another perk, like gunslingers and sharpshooters, if they lack the means to incapacitate a big Zed. Before we dive into weapons, there are 3 important mechanics worth mentioning and emphasizing for this perk, and that is parrying/blocking, movement canceling, and weapon attack direction. All of these are rather unique aspects of the Berserker, and not understanding these can be very frustrating to newer players. Blocking is performed by holding the Alt-Fire key with a melee weapon. While your weapon is in the blocking position, incoming damage is reduced if it strikes within the block zone of your weapon, and typically subtracts anywhere from 40% for the Croval, all the way up to 70% for the Bone Crusher, with most other weapons falling somewhere in between. Parrying, on the other hand, is almost always a better option, but requires you to time your block so your weapon deflects the attack of an enemy. This can be a bit tricky at first, as sometimes the animations are a bit deceptive for certain Zeds. Personally, I have trouble with Sys and Skrakes, but your mileage will vary. Parrying is indicated by a loud blocking noise, followed by a ringing sound if you have the parry skill, as well as a green blocking aura and a change in color saturation on your screen. This typically will reduce damage by 10% more than a block, and will also trigger the parry skill, which is one of the most powerful skills for the Berserker. Be advised that you cannot fully parry a glowing attack, as you won't stumble them back like a normal parry. Still, parrying is almost always the better option in this case, as at the very least you're resetting the timer on your parry skill. Movement canceling, also known as block, parry, and attack canceling, works similar to reload canceling and does wonders for parrying Zeds whose attacks are inconsistent, like Skrakes and Clots. Tapping the reload key will reset your animation and allow you to reattempt a swing or blocking move. This alone will ease the Berserker's rather daunting learning curve, but like anything, will take some practice to master the timing. The final consideration is what direction your weapon swings, and that will be determined by the direction of your movement. Moving forward only will do a forward attack, moving back a backwards attack, the left a left attack, and so on. This is important for Zeds that block, and as well to make sure your attacks connect with the correct Zed. The starting weapon for the Berserker is the Croval, a combination of a crowbar and shovel, and a rather versatile weapon for the Berserker that, thanks to the upgrade system, can be used until the late game if desired. Its fast attack speed and decent damage make it a good starting weapon, and upgrading it to tier 2 allows it to be effective against Edars and bloats with the right skill setup. The Croval isn't without flaws, however, as it has the weakest damage reduction for parrying and blocking along with the katana. It also has the weakest parry strength, meaning larger Zeds will not be stumbled if you perform a successful parry. It's also worth noting that its light attacks deal slashing damage and the heavy attacks deal bludgeoning damage, so make sure you're using the right attack for the right Zed. The next weapon available to the Berserker is the Vlad 1000 nail gun, and one of the few ranged options available to the perk. Despite its seemingly awkward home in this perk's weapon lineup, it is a relatively effective weapon, especially when employed against flesh pounds, as it is one of the easiest ways to deal with them as a Berserker. Pairing this weapon with the Zweihander is a common tactic for higher level players, as the combo allows you to handle both Skrakes and flesh pounds effectively. Remember to keep your parry bonus up with this weapon, and if you plan on upgrading it, either upgrade it to tier 3 or tier 5, as the tier 4 upgrade only grants you an additional 5% damage versus the 20% and 15% from tiers 3 and 5. A popular weapon amongst newer Berserkers, the Katana unfortunately lacks a strong home on the higher levels of play, but is a rather easy weapon to start off with thanks to its fast attack speed and forgiving nature. However, as mentioned earlier, it does lack the ability to block a large amount of damage, but also is not capable of stunning Zeds due to its very low stumble power, even on heavy attacks. For me, it is a guilty pleasure and is very satisfying to use against trash and medium Zeds, especially with an active parry bonus. Unfortunately, the tier 2 Krovel is a better value proposition, since its heavy attacks can more reliably kill Idars and Bloats than a basic Katana. The next weapon, and only available to those who have the game Road Redemption, in addition to Killing Floor 2, is the Road Redeemer. Unfortunately, unless you want this game itself, the weapon is pretty mediocre, and I would avoid using it as it is too slow and deals too little damage to be worthwhile at any point in the game. The final tier 2 weapon, and one of the most recent additions to the Berserker, is the Fire Axe. It is also the only weapon for this perk with built-in stun power, available by using heavy attacks. While the addition of stun is quite nice, its rather slow and cumbersome nature makes the Fire Axe unfortunately a bit forgettable. If you do want to use the Fire Axe, I would suggest capitalizing on its very powerful heavy attacks to kill enemies cleanly, or at the very least stun them. Missing attacks and parries with such a slow weapon, even with movement cancelling, will cost you dearly, and is in my opinion why the Fire Axe feels so unforgiving. The first tier 3 weapon, the Zweihander, is a large two-handed sword and one of the most flexible weapons available to the Berserker. Its strong heavy and light attacks, long reach, ability to combo with weapons like the nail gun, and high damage deflection with parry makes it a very tempting choice for experienced Berserkers. What can make it harder to grasp for more novice players is its rather unresponsive nature, swinging very slow for both light and heavy attacks. This is a weapon that will take some time to get good with and is considered by a lot of Berserkers to be the best weapon for the perk. Remember to be deliberate with your strikes, anticipate an enemy's response, and to use the reload key to cancel any unwanted moves. The next tier 3 weapon, the Pulverizer, is a unique melee weapon that combines a sledgehammer with a shotgun, giving it a powerful heavy attack with a limited amount of ammo. Unfortunately, the heavy attacks are incredibly slow as the weapon has to be recocked after firing, and to make matters worse, the weapon is currently bugged as of writing this, meaning sometimes you won't even deal the intended amount of damage. While it is nice as a quick way to delete crawlers or quarter and flesh pounders on lower difficulties or smaller games, it does get outclassed by almost any other melee weapon in every category, and sometimes performs better with an empty magazine since you can swing almost twice as fast. The first tier 4 weapon, the Static Strikers, are a pair of powered fists that possess rather agile and quick light attacks and very powerful yet somewhat cumbersome heavy and bash attacks. In addition, its heavy attacks also incur EMP affliction, allowing you to avoid raging Zeds like Skrakes, flesh, and quarter pounds with your attacks. It also features very good parry and block damage reductions of 60%. This combined with a parry bonus and the perk's passive damage resistance means that you'll take very little damage if blocking. Heavy attacks also incur knockdown in cap, meaning you have the ability to afflict Zeds with EMP, knockdown, and stumble, all with a single heavy attack. The next weapon and the final ranged weapon for the Berserker is the Eviscerator, which has taken a rather steep fall from grace from from some patches over the last year. It used to be rather popular, especially on boss waves, as it could allow the Berserker to maintain some distance from bosses like the Abomination while still being useful. However, its loss in damage and efficiency have made it less effective but still a forgiving option for less experienced Berserkers. Its launched blades deal similar damage to Zweihander heavy attacks, however, fire slower and require a rather long reload after 5 shots. The final tier 4 weapon, the Bone Crusher, is one of my personal favorites and works exceedingly well for those looking to absorb a ton of damage while still being combat effective. This weapon consists of a mace and a spike shield, and as such has the highest blocking and parry damage reduction, only allowing 30% of incoming damage through. The light attacks for the mace are also relatively snappy, and allow you to quickly wade through trash with a few well-placed headshots. Its heavy attacks can also bring down a big Zed reasonably quickly, although you probably won't look good doing it. Finally, its bash attack delivers a substantial amount of damage, so much so that it often obliterates those on the receiving end. The final weapon for the Berserker, the Battle Axe, is a heavy, slow, and extremely powerful weapon that is a good compromise between effectiveness and skill requirement, allowing mid-level players to pull their weight and then some by using a combination of parrying and heavy attacks to get the job done. Against big Zeds at level 25 and with an active parry bonus, Skrakes can be dispatched in no more than 2 headshots and flesh pounds in around 4 or 5. Its major weakness is its cumbersome nature and inability to combo well with other weapons like the nail gun due to its long swap times. Otherwise, remember to be deliberate with your strikes, maintain a parry bonus, and cancel any missed attacks or blocks, and you should have no issue with the Battle Axe. For the Berserker, I am only going to recommend a single skill build, running Skirmisher or Dreadnought for slot 1, Butcher for slot 2, Parry for slot 3, Smash for slot 4, and Spartan for slot 5. I give the option for Skirmisher or Dreadnought as both work reasonably well depending on if you have a medic or not. Remember, Skirmisher is always going to be useful, but Dreadnought will only be useful if you sustain more than 100 damage. The combination of Smash, Butcher, and Parry allows you to absorb much more damage than with Resistance, but also quickens up your time to kill against big and medium Zeds. This will improve your overall efficiency and reduce overall damage taken thanks to the reduced time in combat and higher damage negation. For builds, the most versatile for a very skilled Berserker will be the combination of the Zweihander and Nail Gun. As mentioned earlier, this allows you to do some pretty insane combos against Flesh Pounds and Skrakes, and gives you pretty good time to kill compared to other perks. For upgrades, either take one weapon at tier 5 and the other at tier 3, as this will give you the most efficient distribution of damage. A simpler loadout for less experienced players would be simply to take the Battle Axe, as it fares reasonably well against most Zeds including Flesh Pounds and Skrakes. With the extra weight, you can equip something more agile for dealing with large groups of smaller Zeds, but remember that the swap times are a bit cumbersome and the added weight of the 2 weapons will slow you down. Another loadout and a big guilty pleasure of mine is using the Bone Crusher at tier 5 as a primary, plus a Nail Gun at tier 3 for some additional ranged punch. The Bone Crusher by itself is a nice weapon for absorbing tons of damage and zerkwalling a lane or a boss. The final loadout recommendation I have is the Static Strikers at tier 4 with a tier 5 Nail Gun to deal with threats at range and Flesh Pounds. While you can upgrade the Strikers to tier 5, the damage buff is negligible overall and does not reduce the amount of hits to kill in an ideal situation with my skill recommendations. Tactics for the Berserker are a bit more complicated than with other perks, as melee combat is much more organic and situational than plinking big Zeds with an M99. However, I can recommend some doctrinal ideas that can help shape your combat style a little bit better. Rule number 1 is always know what's around you, as engaging blindly can get you into trouble with certain Zeds like bloats and husks without resistance or an active parry bonus. If you watch closely, that's usually how I'll sustain excess damage in the clips provided in the video by not spotting a potential hazard before moving in to engage. Rule number 2 is have a plan for ingress and especially egress. Just because you cannot be grabbed by clots doesn't mean that a crawler or Edar can't halt your escape. Make sure you have a shit hits the fan option in case you fail to follow rule number 1. Rule 3 is to remember to parry to avoid damage, but also to keep your parry bonus active. Not only will losing your parry bonus reduce damage and attack speed, but also make you take more damage. Also, parrying non-glowing attacks will stumble back enemies, and you can parry multiple attacks with a single block. Rule 4, and my final generalized rule for the Berserker, is to watch your health. With an active parry bonus or just losing yourself in the carnage, you can lose track of your health and potentially outpace a medic's healing. Just be careful not to get caught up, and be ready to bail if your health drops too low. There are some other important things to remember with the Berserker, like don't share a lane with a commando or a sharpshooter if you can help it. This is because commandos will need constant trash on hand that a Berserker will need for parrying, and Berserkers also have an annoying habit of body blocking Zeds and denying easy headshots to sharpshooters. Overall, consider what every other perk is trying to do, and do your best to try to play around that. Berserkers can be very useful team members and absorb incredible amounts of damage and aggro, and are capable of dishing it right back out. Its only real issues come when dealing with some of the bosses and ranged enemies such as Edars, Husks, and Bloats. Thank you very much for watching. Join us next time when we take a look at the final perk, the Survivalist. Feel free to subscribe so you never miss a guide, and also feel free to check out my Patreon if you wish to support me. But until next time, happy hunting.